Hello, and welcome to another Best Anime Recaps. Today I'm going to give you a recap of the anime called Goblin Slayer. Sit back, relax, and enjoy. A young priestess embarks on her first journey. She attends the local guild and receives her first rank. With no party available, she joins a group of rookie explorers as a porcelain rank adventurer. They plan to invade a goblin-infested cave, thinking goblins to be easy prey. A teenage warrior, a wizard, and a fighter make up the company. The priestess challenges the group's readiness as they journey near the cave. They had no potions or other supplies with them. While the rest of the group rejects her fears, they proceed deeper into the cave in search of a goblin totem. They go trekking into the darkness with only one torch in hand. With little room, the cave begins to constrict. Things swiftly go wrong in the darkness as the inexperienced group is attacked from behind by perverted goblins. A small group of goblins attacks them from behind. She spells for skill with a fearful wizard, only to be outnumbered. The goblins strip her down and knife the wizard while she tries to cast her spells. The remainder of the company tries to assist the young warrior, who is swinging his long sword wildly. The priestess tries to heal the wizard while the young warrior kills several goblins, but to no effect. The goblins soon outnumber the young fighter. Due to the tight nature of the cave, he accidentally disarmed himself. In front of his group, the goblins maul him, cutting the young fighter into bits. As the slaughter unfolds, the warrior uses her martial arts to protect the priestess. As she fights off the smaller goblins, a massive hobgoblin attacks her, smashing her against the walls. A swarm of goblins undresses the now immobilized warrior, molesting her in the process. All of her comrades had been slaughtered, ravished, or abducted, leaving her alone. The priestess attempts to flee with the dying wizard. She fumbles, wetting herself in fright as an arrow is lodged in her shoulder. The Goblin Slayer comes just as she is about to become the last victim. Heavy footsteps reverberate in the night as the Goblin Slayer approaches, unkempt and equipped to the brim with unrivaled armor. He dispatches the goblins who are attacking them, killing them one by one. He gives the priestess a potion while disregarding the wizard's demise. In mercy, the goblin hunter kills the wizard, giving her the quick death she required. He chooses to proceed further into the cave, where the priestess follows. He teaches the priestess everything they got wrong by murdering more goblins, teaching her on their war mentality and tactics. With the assistance of the priestess, the Goblin Slayer goes on a rampage, murdering the remaining goblins, including a goblin shaman and hobgoblin. The pair subsequently discovers many goblin newborns, which the Goblin Slayer savagely slaughters. While the priestess is ready to dismiss the newborns, the Goblin Slayer slaughters them, preventing these infants from becoming future dangers. The couple rescues the abducted ladies within the cave, but the warrior is so devastated that she runs directly to the temple. Despite her painful experience, Priestess decides to accompany Goblin Slayer on his adventures. Another day arrives, and a redhead girl awakens to begin her day on the farm. Cowgirl makes breakfast for herself, her uncle, and her childhood pal Goblin Slayer. The latter patrols the property to ensure that everything is safe and in good working order. Goblin Slayer travels to the city with his childhood companion Cowgirl to sell her uncle's crops. He later goes to the Adventurers Guild to look for work, discovering a swarm of adventurers on the lookout for more exciting quests. People in the guild mock him and label him a freak because of his mismatching armor and the fact that he keeps to himself. Despite his high status, his reputation suffers as a result. Nonetheless, the guild lady seems glad he's around, offering him the goblin tasks that no one wants to accept because of the poor compensation. While selecting a task, the Goblin Slayer confesses that his town was invaded while he was a child. Goblins stormed his hamlet, slaughtering everyone, including the cowgirl's parents. He also describes how he witnessed his elder sister being ravaged, molested, and murdered by goblins. As a result, he began training himself to kill goblins at an early age. This concentration also caused him to become cold and socially uncomfortable. Cowgirl's uncle advises his niece that the Goblin Slayer has gone insane, but Cowgirl continues to stand by her friend. Later, Goblin Slayer and Priestess set out on a quest to attack a goblin-occupied citadel. He raids the stronghold, destroying it with fire arrows. During this time, he employs the priestess's new protection talent, which produces a wall of light. This stops the goblins from escape by plugging entrances and allowing the goblins to burn within. A bard performs stories about goblin slayers and their deeds in another city to the east. High Elf and her friends confirm that the Orc Ball adventure they are looking for exists. After some time, the High Elf archer, Dwarf Shaman, and Lizard Priest approach the guild girl and requested an adventurer. They drop names like Orc Ball and Beer Cutter, which are people's names in their own tongue. The person's real name is Goblin Slayer. The Goblin Slayer comes to the guild and talks with the trio about it. During this time, a few inexperienced adventurers attempt to pry the priestess from the Goblin Slayer's party, but the witch guards her. During this time, High Elf Archer informs Goblin Slayer that their kind has joined forces with the human kingdoms to confront the Demon Lord's troops. Because of this, they want to recruit him on a related quest, but he declines. Although the High Elf Archer is unconcerned about demons, the Dwarf Shaman and Lizard Priest describe ruins in elven territories that the goblins repurposed into a hideaway. This persuades the Goblin Slayer to join the fight. The priestess joins them on their journey, but not before telling off the Goblin Slayer for not consulting with her first. The gang sets camp and eats their food while on an adventures. They sleep for the night after sharing rations, wine, and cheese and discussing the origins of goblins. The goblin sentries are killed by High Elf Archer after the group arrives at the ruins. The Goblin Slayer and the others enter, preparing to slaughter a swarm of goblins. The gang enters the ruins, noting the absence of totems. They walk around the maze of corridors, saving the life of an elf prisoner in the process. An enraged High Elf Archer swears to avenge her clan and soon discovers a central hall where goblins sleep. The Slayer's squad kills all the sleeping goblins without waking them up, but the stillness awakens the goblins' commander, an ogre who works under the Demon Lord. The ogre battles the gang with his incredible strength and tremendous fire magic. With his massive size and regenerative skills, he proves to be a challenging adversary, tanking everything the party throws at him. With everyone exhausted, Goblin Slayer plays his trump card, a magic scroll. The witch's magically laden scroll summons a gate spell that sends powerful jets of water from the deep ocean. The scroll's blade-like water streams slice the orc apart. When all is over, the Goblin Slayer berates the orc before delivering the killing blow. Elven reinforcements arrived with a carriage ready to transport the Goblin Slayer's party. They return to the city to recover, but Goblin Slayer's devotion inspires High Elf Archer to take him on a meaningful adventure. After healing from his wounds, the Goblin Slayer assists the cowgirl in transporting supplies to town. He encounters the High Elf Archer dwarf shaman and the lizard priest there. He expresses an interest in exploring some ruins with them. The priestess reports that she received a rank promotion after properly thanking the Goblin Slayer for saving her life. Meanwhile, two newbie adventurers lost a sword in the sewers and were looking for ways to retrieve it. They asked around for ideas on how to get it. They ultimately chat to Goblin Slayer, who instructs them to use a club as an improvised weapon so they don't require technical abilities to battle. The guild girl then requests that Goblin Slayer appear as an observer on a promotion exam, disciplining a rescout for taking loot from his group. And while the rescout contemplates assaulting guild girl, he backs down owing to the frightening presence of Goblin Slayer. To retrieve their weapon, the two teenage adventurers return to the sewers with a club and a magical candle supplied by the witch. Meanwhile, Goblin Slayer receives a unique goblin slaying request from the Sword Maiden herself. In Watertown, the Sword Maiden, a retired adventurer who fought the last Demon King, meets the Goblin Slayer and the rest of the group. She reports on the recent spate of unusual killings in their community. She believes goblins reside in the sewers and can therefore search the town. Many other adventurers have failed and the army refused to mobilize to combat goblins. She now asks the Goblin Slayer for assistance, and he accepts. The Goblin Slayer takes the group into the sewers, where they discover ancient ruins. They subsequently come upon goblins that use boats to travel the sewers. The party eventually sinks their opponents while fighting against the goblin swarm, only to discover a huge alligator guarding the sewers. During this time, they use the alligator's tail as bait to kill the remainder of the goblin fleet. As they return to the surface, the Goblin Slayer's uncertainty becomes clear. Even though the goblins understood how to operate a boat, they had no knowledge about the alligator. This causes him to believe that the goblins were placed there on purpose. After a little break in town, the Goblin Slayer and his companions return to the sewers. During this period, he brings a canary with him to alert them of any toxic gas leaks. The group goes deeper into the sewers, but they stumble into a trap and are imprisoned within a tomb. The canary is alerted when the goblins start spewing toxic gas into the chamber. The group of the Goblin Slayer goes on high alert, effectively closing off the vents with quicklime and dwarf shaman powers. They keep the gas from entering the chamber, forcing the goblins to attack them directly. The goblins then summon their goblin champion, who attacks the Goblin Slayer with a devastating assault. The Goblin Slayer's party gradually becomes overrun, even having the priestess attacked in the process. As the Goblin Slayer dreams of his rigorous training in the past, he is moved by the priestess's cries. The Goblin Slayer awakens in a rage, attacking the Goblin Champion from behind with a whole lock of hair from a nearby body. As the Goblin Champion dies, he knocks out an eye socket, taking out the Goblin's right eye in the process. The party is able to regroup only when the Goblin Champion and his minions escape. While the lizard priest is tending to the priestess's wounds, the Goblin Slayer falls from his own wounds and is on the verge of death. The next day, the Goblin Slayer wakes up in a temple chamber without problem. He has a miraculous recovery owing to the priestess and Sword Maiden participating in a resurrection ceremony. The remainder of the party is still scouting the sewers and planning their next move. The Goblin Slayer and priestess spend the day in town repairing their equipment and eating ice cream at the pier. Oh, isn't that cute? It's like she has never had ice cream before. They encounter a witch and a spearman who deliver an item at the request of the Goblin Slayer. He claims it will soon be vital for their next foray into the sewers. The party reassembles, with the Goblin Slayer and priestess returning to the sewers, only to discover a huge eye guarding a relic within a chamber. The group destroys the beast with a little forethought by encouraging it to incinerate the flower-filled area, initiating a large chain reaction of fine particle explosions. They uncover an item within the chamber as they defeat the huge eye, a mirror gate that moves individuals from one location to another. Another army of goblins swarms the group as they debate what to do with the priceless relic. The Goblin Slayer and his crew begin to defend themselves against the approaching horde by slicing and chopping their way through the goblins. During this period, they attempt to remove the mirror with the intention of using it as an escape method. They successfully relocated the mirror and took refuge under it, allowing Dwarf Shannon to collapse the ceiling and crush the goblins. After successfully escaping through the mirror with their lives, they submerged the mirror in water and covered it with cement. Later on, the Goblin Slayer confronts the Sword Maiden. He feels she is the source of some of the incidents that sparked the Goblin probe. She admits her involvement and expresses her desire to draw attention to the situation. The Sword Maiden also discloses her horrific background, when goblins tortured and molested her in her early years as an explorer. The Goblin Slayer, who does not fully comprehend her logic, promises her that he will continue to slaughter goblins, even in her dreams. The Sword Maiden expresses her love for him, something he completely rejects. The group then returns home. The Goblin Slayer says he wants to try making ice cream and promises to share it with the crew, especially an ecstatic lizard priest. As they travel to their destination, the Goblin Slayer recalls some of his early memories. Goblin Slayer takes a day off and spends it caring for his armor. It isn't long until the Goblin Slayer and his companions discover that the hero has vanquished the Demon King. As the threat to their world has lessened, adventurers are in great spirits throughout the city. He talks with numerous other adventurers, including a female knight who hopes to build a new adventurer training academy. During this tranquil period, Cowgirl joins Goblin Slayer and his company for dinner, reflecting on how he came to have such a huge number of pals. While he dismisses this as essential for his quest to kill all goblins, she sparkles with pride and envy. Later that night, Cowgirl and Goblin Slayer spend a private moment under the stars, pushing him to be more forthcoming about his plans for the future. She is still concerned about him because most explorers either die or are seriously injured. The Goblin Slayer's daily patrol is accompanied by the voice of her thoughts. But something terrible is going on this time. There are footsteps all over the property, and thousands of goblins are getting closer. A large goblin raid is in the planning. Following his finding, Goblin Slayer talks with Cowgirl about his grim discovery. A major goblin onslaught is on its way. He can't protect the farm or those he loves since he only knows how to fight within a cave and not on an open field. He begs the Cowgirl to escape, but she refuses. Cowgirl's uncle instructs him to find other methods to meet his requirements, but he is not permitted to make Cowgirl cry. He then turns to the only other solution he can think of, the Adventurers Guild. He walks right up to the spearman, who seems unconcerned with the Goblin Slayer's exploits. The Goblin Slayer announces his findings loudly. He anticipates hundreds of goblins to assault, most likely led by a goblin lord. The Goblin Slayer submits a request for help in repelling an impending goblin army. The adventurers find the idea ludicrous, but Spearman inquires as to what he may provide in exchange. Everything is promised by Goblin Slayer, everything he possesses, everything under his control. While he cannot guarantee his life, he is willing to give his time, expertise, and abilities. After hearing this remark, Spearman chooses to assist. His reward is just a drink after the event. The remainder of the Goblin Slayer's group arrives, ready to face the task. The old girl overhears the commotion, returns to her manager, and launches a new mission for everyone. Each goblin skull brought from the impending raid is worth 1 gold piece. The adventurers begin to join in, with the majority of the guild eager to assist. Some help for the money, while others, such as Heavy Warrior, help because they owe him thanks. Because Goblin Slayer is a guild mainstay, the adventurers are eager to assist. The Goblin Slayer understands that more people care, and they all prepare for the farm's goblin invasion. The adventurers battle the goblins who want to launch a multi-stage attack on the property. The goblins begin by using women as meat shields before putting them to sleep and killing them outright with no fatalities. The goblins then dispatch their goblin riders on wolves, only to be defeated by spear traps. The goblins are outplayed in every step as the adventurers fight off the horde with little casualties. The goblin ruler then sends out his hog goblins and goblin champions, but the best adventurers destroy his troops one by one. As things become increasingly desperate, the Goblin King attempts to leave, but the Goblin Slayer intercepts him. Meanwhile, the Goblin ruler remembers why he fled. Until then, he believes he can simply recreate his army. Going back to his early years of adversity, the Goblin Slayer expected this, anticipating and calculating the Goblin Lord's every action. The Goblin Slayer begins battling, but he is at a disadvantage due to the Goblin Lord's overwhelming power. He keeps fighting, even using pocket sand to confuse his opponent. The adventurers successfully slay the remaining goblins on the battlefield. Even the novice warrior kills a goblin, while a hefty warrior and female knight battle a goblin champion together. A goblin champion is easily defeated by a spearman who is considered as the finest of the frontier. The Goblin Slayer is losing his duel with the Goblin Lord, receiving a critical stab only to fall down and continue to be trampled on as the Goblin Lord boldly attempts to destroy his opponent. The priestess arrives just in time, locking him between two shields of defense. The Goblin Lord pleads for his life, using common language to pledge never to do anything wicked again. Assuming the priestess to be a naive girl like a female adventurer in the past he must have met. The Goblin Slayer, on the other hand, is aware of the deceit and cuts his throat. As they continue, the Goblin Slayer tells her that he intended her to use 3 protection spells as a failsafe trap, but she only uses 2 to save 1 for healing him. They come out on top, rescuing the farm and everyone. The action then shifts to the adventurers rejoicing at the guild bar. Everyone is enjoying the rewards of their trip, eating and drinking to their heart's delight thanks to the Goblin Slayer. During this point, the priestess requests her payment because she wishes to see his face without his helmet. He agrees, displaying a pale, attractive face under the helmet. A drunken high elf archer witnesses the action, drawing the attention of the whole pub to the Goblin Slayer without his mask. The end. Thanks for watching. Stay safe and see you again soon.